In 1925, the world met a mask of pure gold weighing 22.5 pounds, meant to immortalize a boy king. A century later, experts still argue, why does Egypt's most famous artifact have features worn only by queens and children, including pierced ears that no pharaoh his age ever displayed in death? Today, as new 2024 research reignites debate, even the specialists cannot agree if King Tutankhamun's mask truly belonged to him. What secret is the golden face hiding? And why does this single detail launch a battle between hard science and visual truth? The first clue begins with a mystery no one can explain. 5 distinct voices shape the story of Tutankhamun's mask, each defined as much by their methods as by their conclusions. The first is the discoverer, Howard Carter, whose detailed records from the 1920s remain the foundation for every modern investigation. Carter's archive, housed at Oxford's Griffith Institute, includes object cards, field notes, and annotated photographs. These documents record the mask's features, including its pierced ears, but Carter left the question of their meaning untouched. His perspective, rooted in the moment of discovery, still anchors the debate a century later. The conservator perspective comes from Christian Ekman, who led the 2015 restoration after the mask's ceremonial beard was accidentally detached. Granted rare laboratory access, Ekman's team used X-ray fluorescence analysis to map the gold's composition across the mask's surface. Their approach prioritized non-invasive measurements and technical imaging, producing the most comprehensive scientific dataset on the object to date. Ekman's findings have become the benchmark for arguments about the mask's construction and authenticity. For the iconographer, the mask is a coded image as much as a physical artifact. Joanne Fletcher, professor at the University of York, specializes in royal portraiture and funerary symbolism. Her 2024 study re-examines Carter's original records and high-resolution imagery, focusing on stylistic clues such as the pierced ears and facial features. Fletcher's work places visual analysis and historical context at the center, reading the mask as a product of shifting identities and royal reuse. The reuse theory advocate Nicholas Reeves builds his case from patterns of adaptation and repurposing seen throughout Tutankhamun's tomb. Reeves studies the broader context of the Amarna period's political upheaval, tracking how burial goods intended for other rulers, possibly Nefertiti, were reassigned to Tutankhamun. His arguments draw on inscriptional irregularities, stylistic comparisons, and the documented reuse of other tomb objects, weaving together circumstantial evidence for a recycled mask. Finally, the national custodian is represented by Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities. They hold the ultimate authority over the mask's care and testing. Every scientific examination, restoration, or new hypothesis must receive formal approval from these guardians. Their decisions balance the need for research with the responsibility to protect a unique symbol of Egyptian heritage. The mask's current home, the Grand Egyptian Museum in Giza, reflects this custodianship, providing both security and public access. These 5 roles, discoverer, conservator, iconographer, reuse theory advocate, and national custodian, define the boundaries of what can be known and what remains uncertain. Each brings a different lens, from archival documentation and laboratory analysis to visual interpretation and heritage policy. The ongoing debate about the mask's origin and meaning is shaped by the interplay between these perspectives, each anchored in a specific institutional or methodological position. In the sections that follow, their voices and evidence will surface again and again, sometimes in agreement, often in direct contradiction, but always in pursuit of the mask's elusive truth. Two pierced earlobes frame the face of Tutankhamun's golden mask, small deliberate openings modeled in gold, not the result of later damage. These holes are not hidden. They are as carefully finished as the eyes and lips, yet their presence sits at odds with the traditions of royal burial art. In the New Kingdom, adult male pharaohs were not depicted with pierced ears on funerary masks or sarcophagi. The convention, observed across coffins, statues, and wall reliefs, reserved visible ear piercings for queens, royal children, and in rare cases, female pharaohs like Hatshepsut. Among the many treasures of the Valley of the Kings, adult male kings such as Amenhotep II, Thutmose IV, and Horemheb are shown with unbroken lobes, the ears either left plain or covered by headdress. The pattern is so consistent that Egyptologists describe it as a visual rule, even though no statistical survey has ever been published. Pierced ears stand out as an unusual feature. Howard Carter, working in the stifling tomb in 1925, took careful note of the ear holes in his excavation records. His field notes, now stored at Oxford's Griffith Institute, describe the mask's features in detail. Carter called the pierced lobes a feature that had long been overlooked, yet he moved on without further comment. For Carter, the mask belonged to Tutankhamun, and the anomaly did not seem to warrant investigation. For nearly a century, this detail remained in the background, visible in photographs and mentioned in passing, but never at the center of debate. Field notes preserved the observation. Joanne Fletcher and her team at the University of York have brought the pierced ears to the fore. Their research, based on direct study of Carter's archives and high-resolution images, argues that this is not a trivial detail. In their view, the mask's pierced ears are a strong indication that it was originally crafted for a high-status woman or a royal child, certainly not for an adult male king at the end of his reign. Fletcher calls it a long, overlooked clue that challenges the mask's accepted authorship. She points out that by the time of his death, Tutankhamun was around 18 or 19 years old. In funerary art, a king of that age would not be shown with earrings or with pierced lobes that mark childhood or feminine status. Clue is the word she emphasizes. Other scholars, including some Egyptian Egyptologists, caution against reading too much into the ear holes. They note that Tutankhamun's own mummy, along with some other royal males, shows evidence of pierced ears. Ear piercing was common among Egyptian children of both sexes, and some argue that the mask's holes could simply reflect the king's youthful image or personal adornment. Without a comprehensive published survey of all New Kingdom royal imagery, the debate remains open. Still, the pierced ears remain a visible physical anomaly, a detail that refuses to be explained away and that continues to invite questions about the mask's original owner. Debate continues among specialists. The mask's pierced earlobes are not an isolated oddity. They sit alongside stylistic features and patterns of reuse found elsewhere in Tutankhamun's tomb. The question is not only why an adult king would be shown this way, but whether the mask itself began its life as the burial portrait of someone else. The small holes in the gold have become a focal point for a much larger mystery, one that reaches beyond the mask into the shifting identities and turbulent politics of Egypt's 18th dynasty. Mystery drives the search for answers. During the late reign of Akhenaten, Egypt's royal court fractured in ways that left deep marks on its burial traditions. Tutankhamun's short life unfolded against the backdrop of this turbulence. After Akhenaten's experiment with Aten worship collapsed, the dynasty scrambled to reassert old religious norms and royal legitimacy. In this climate, the boundaries between one ruler's legacy and the next grew porous. Objects meant for one sovereign were reassigned to another, names erased and reinscribed, identities blurred by necessity and haste. Inside Tutankhamun's tomb, this pattern is everywhere. Several of the most lavish grave goods, canopic coffinettes, shrines, even parts of the nested coffins, carry traces of earlier ownership. Hieroglyphs on these items show clear evidence of alteration. The names of Neferuaten, a ruler widely believed to be Nefertiti under a throne name, were hammered flat and replaced with Tutankhamun's. The practice was not subtle. On gilded shrines and ceremonial boxes, traces of the old inscriptions remain visible beneath the new. These are not isolated cases, but a recurring motif in the tomb's inventory, suggesting a systematic approach to reusing royal funerary equipment during a period of instability. The absence of Nefertiti's own tomb deepens the intrigue. She vanishes from the historical record near the end of Akhenaten's reign, only to reappear in disputed fragments as Neferuaten, a female pharaoh whose burial place remains unlocated. The missing tomb has fueled speculation that her funerary goods, including a gold mask, were diverted to Tutankhamun's burial when the need arose. The mask's own features, pierced earlobes, soft jawline, and full lips, echo the artistic conventions of Amarna queens more than those of later male kings. For Nicholas Reeves and others, the combination of feminine iconography and documented reuse in the tomb makes it plausible that the mask began as a portrait of Nefertiti or another high-status woman. Political motives for such reassignment were strong. The court faced the urgent task of burying a young king with the trappings of divine authority, even as the supply of royal regalia was fractured by years of religious upheaval. Repurposing elite artifacts was both practical and symbolic, a way to erase the traces of heresy while ensuring the new burial met traditional expectations. In this context, the mask's anomalies fit a broader pattern. It stands not as an isolated enigma, but as part of a tapestry of adaptation and improvisation woven through the Valley of the Kings at the end of the 18th dynasty. 70 days. That was the time allowed by ancient Egyptian ritual to prepare a pharaoh's body for eternity. Mummification, wrapping, and the final procession had to be completed within this fixed window. Yet, the creation of Tutankhamun's golden mask demanded a level of craftsmanship that, by any modern estimate, stretched the limits of what was possible in such a short span. Artisans began with raw gold that had to be refined to near perfect purity. They hammered thick sheets over carved forms, annealing the metal again and again to achieve the mask's smooth curves and delicate features. The face required hours of detailed chasing, every eyelid and lip edge carefully modeled by hand. Then came the inlays. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, obsidian, colored glass, and quartz, each piece cut to fit its cavity with almost invisible precision. More than 100 inlays form the stripes of the Nimes headdress, and the intricate collar, each one set with an adhesive that had to harden before the next could be added. The protective spell from the Book of the Dead was engraved along the shoulders and back. Its hieroglyphs meant to shield the king's spirit forever. Modern goldsmiths and conservators, looking at the mask's complexity, suggest that producing such a piece from scratch would require many weeks, perhaps well beyond the 70 days allowed by funerary custom. Even with a team of specialists working in parallel, the demands of refining, forming, chasing, inlaying, and finishing would test the limits of an ancient workshop. There are no surviving records to tell us exactly how long it took, but the sheer number of steps and the level of detail make a rushed, posthumous commission seem unlikely. This practical dilemma strengthens the argument for reuse. If a mask already existed, crafted for another royal burial, perhaps a queen like Nefertiti, adapting it for Tutankhamun could have solved the time problem. The mask's glass and stone inlays remain flawless, showing no signs of the thermal stress that high-temperature soldering would cause. Ancient glass softens at temperatures above 800 degrees Celsius, while gold soldering often requires even more heat. Yet, the inlays are pristine, their surfaces uncracked and colors undimmed. If the face had been added later, the craftsman would have needed a method that avoided damaging these delicate materials, or the inlays were set only after the main goldwork was complete. The mask's perfection, combined with the narrow burial window, forces a closer look at every technical detail. Forensic analysis of the gold and inlays is now central to the debate. Did the artisans of the 18th dynasty possess techniques lost to time, or did they rely on the practical solution of repurposing what was already at hand? The answers remain hidden within the mask's flawless surface, waiting for science to catch up with ancient skill. In 2015, a rare opportunity for direct scientific analysis arrived when Christian Ekman's conservation team gained access to Tutankhamun's mask. Using X-ray fluorescence, they mapped the gold composition across the face, headdress, and collar. The results showed subtle but consistent differences. The face registered as a paler alloy with slightly higher silver content, while the headdress and collar were richer in gold and produced a warmer tone. Yet, Ekman's instruments found no sharp compositional break or boundary, no evidence of a soldered seam or a later addition. The construction in his reading fit the known pattern for royal masks. Two main gold sheets joined during original manufacture, not a face cut out and grafted onto a pre-existing body. This technical dataset, built on non-invasive measurements and controlled laboratory conditions, remains the most detailed instrumental record of the mask to date. Joanne Fletcher's 2024 study approaches the same artifact from a different angle. Her team worked with high-resolution images and Carter's original photographs, tracing the mask's surface for visual clues. Fletcher points to what she describes as clear evidence of soldering along the junction of the face and collar. In her view, the gold of the face is not only compositionally distinct, but also visually set apart, a different metal joined with a technique that leaves subtle but visible traces. Fletcher's argument relies on the careful reading of surface features, tonal contrasts, shifts in reflectivity, and the appearance of a seam that, to her eye, suggests a later intervention. She frames these observations as evidence that Tutankhamun's face was grafted onto a mask originally made for someone else, likely a royal woman. Her findings place visual observation front and center. The core of the disagreement lies in method. Ekman's instrumental analysis prioritizes measurable data with detection limits and error margins. Fletcher's iconographic approach centers on what the eye can see, reinforced by historical context and stylistic precedent. Each method has its limits. X-ray fluorescence can miss seams that are thinner than its spatial resolution, while visual inspection can be influenced by lighting, corrosion, or even ancient repairs. The face headdress boundary becomes a battleground for these approaches, with each side reading the same artifact through a different lens. As a result, the question of whether the mask is a unified original or a composite object remains suspended between the reach of scientific instruments and the interpretive power of the human eye. A subtle difference in color divides the face from the headdress on Tutankhamun's mask. Scientific analysis in 2015, led by Christian Ekman, confirmed that the face is coated in a gold alloy with slightly more silver, producing a pale tone, while the headdress and collar are a deeper shade, closer to pure gold. This contrast is visible to the naked eye, yet the underlying cause remains a technical puzzle. Some conservators have suggested that the color shift could be explained by an ultra-thin surface layer, perhaps only 30 nanometers thick, applied during finishing. A layer so fine it would take thousands stacked together to match the width of a human hair. Such a film could account for the visual distinction without requiring the face to be a separate piece. However, the detailed data supporting this explanation have not been published. No peer-reviewed study has mapped this nanolayer or shown its continuity across the mask's surface. The question of manufacture is mirrored in the mask's inscriptions. On the broad collar and the back, the cartouches bear Tutankhamun's royal names. Some researchers have described irregularities in the hieroglyphs, awkward spacing and subtle overcuts that hint at possible re-engraving. In 2015, reports circulated that, under raking light, traces of an earlier name, perhaps Nefertiti, could be glimpsed beneath the current inscriptions. Yet, Ekman's XRF analysis found no compositional disturbance or filler that would indicate erased and recut cartouches. The technical evidence remains inconclusive, and the visual clues are open to interpretation. To resolve these disputes, specialists have proposed a new generation of non-invasive tests. High-resolution microscopy could scan the junction between the face and the headdress for micro seams or solder lines invisible to the eye. Neutron radiography, capable of imaging dense metal without harm, could reveal hidden joins or internal boundaries. Advanced spectroscopy might trace the depth and composition of any surface layers, distinguishing between original finish and later intervention. Each method promises greater clarity, but each also requires careful approval from Egypt's curators. Until such studies are carried out and their data released, the mask's surface remains both a clue and a barrier, a gold skin that keeps its secrets just beneath the threshold of certainty. In 2024, science and scholarship still disagree on what lies beneath the gold. As technology advances, our drive to uncover the truth behind Tutankhamun's mask pushes the boundaries of archaeology itself. The unanswered questions remind us history's greatest icons never give up their secrets easily. Sometimes, mystery is what keeps the past powerfully alive. What do you think the mask is still hiding?